Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming here. It is really, really wonderful that you all are here tonight. I'm sure more are streaming in, and we will now get started. We have all of our esteemed speakers here tonight. I apologize for them being crammed up at the front of the podium, but it's just like a good old-fashioned PLP rally, I think, probably, when you think about it. Hello? Okay. Thank you. Good evening again to the family of L. Frederick Wade, Mrs. Anthea Wade, Dr. Youssef Wade and his wife, Kamala, and other members of the family will be here, I'm sure, shortly to join us. And I would just wish to thank them for agreeing to hold this event under their patronage. Thank you very much. To our honored speakers, former premiers and party leaders, Dame Jennifer Smith, W. Alexander Scott, Dr. Ewart Brown, and Paula Cox, former party chairman Victor Fishington, and esteemed author and former MP Dale Butler. Thank you for agreeing to participate. We acknowledge the presence of the executives of the Bermuda Industrial Union here today, Mr. President and your executive team. We acknowledge representatives of the Progressive Labor Party. I see at least one of my colleagues, the Honorable Dennis Lister there, former MP Mr. Walter Roberts. I see MP Deella Rebane, Michael Scott. I'm sure there are others here. My colleague, Mr. Rob Commission, Mr. Weeks. I haven't seen everybody come in, so members, you can beat me up in caucus if I've missed you later. But I'm sure they are here, and thank you for the representatives of the party and my colleagues who are here tonight, and former members of the PLP parliamentary group who are here. Relatives and friends of Mr. Wade, welcome. Welcome to you all to this esteemed program, L. Frederick Wade, His Political Life and Legacy. It is, of course, deeply moving that you have decided to be here tonight to engage in what I hope is a good discussion about a man that was very important to many of us, who during his nearly 30 years in politics worked hard for all Bermudians with the goal of building a more equitable society. A man who, it may be argued, saved the PLP from itself. It is no doubt L. Frederick Wade helped to change Bermuda and impacted the lives of many. I hope you are also here because you believe he made a difference and deserves to be remembered and celebrated. So give yourselves a hand for being here, because I believe that's why you're here. You believe in that he made a difference, that he was important to you and all Bermudians in the work that he did through his life, of which he gave his life for. Now, there's another reason why you are here. It's because I decided I was going to organize this forum for a few reasons. Firstly, this is my 50th year on this planet. Thank you. And not only that, but it's obviously a milestone. And usually when you have milestones, you get things. People give you gifts, they give you tribute, they give you congratulations. You know, they make you feel good. But I decided that a part of what I would do is to give something back. And when I shared this idea with others, they were elated and happy that I was going to be doing it. The party did do a tribute to him about 10 years ago. But I decided I was going to do it and relieve my party colleagues of the angst and stress of organizing something else, of which the PLP often does, and a lot of people have to take time and energy to do it, and I thank them for doing that. But I decided I would take this on myself. This is my personal project. Very selfish, of course, but I decided this is what I was going to do to give back to you and to the community, to remember this gentleman. So a number of people heard that I was going to do it, and they were elated. because it was important they felt that in 20 years from his passing that he be remembered. So I thank you all for being here because of my birthday and also because of Mr. Wade. Thank you again. And the significance is that the day that he died on the 13th is actually my birthday as well. So he died on my 30th birthday. Unfortunate, but that's one reason why I will always remember, because it was an important date for me. But as we are here to remember him, that is really the more important thing. But I took this and I used my birthday to do something to give back to you all. So welcome and thanks. But before we get started, and I want to get started quickly, don't want to waste too much more time, I'd like to mention Mr. Jamal Simmons, MP, who had originally agreed to be the moderator, but he and his wife have taken their son off to India, where he's going to be studying at United World Colleges, so he was not able to be here. So I just want to let you know and give he and his wife well wishes and their son, but he would have been your moderator tonight, so I'm going to fill in. I'd also like to mention Pastor Terry Hassel, who originally agreed to be the person who gave the blessing tonight, but he had to leave the island to attend a funeral. And he is the pastor at her chapel, which is on the Glebe Road, which many of you remember, that was where Mr. Wade lived. So that's why I asked him. It was significant that a pastor of the Glebe Road come and do the blessing, because that's where Mr. Wade lived and where until his days ended. So I thank my cousin, the Reverend Nicholas Tweed, for filling in. And he agreed he almost didn't allow me to finish asking him. So I thank him for being here and to provide support, backing up his AME colleague to give the blessing tonight. So with those few comments, I think we should get started. And as I said, I am your moderator tonight. And we will now have the opening prayer by Reverend Nicholas Tweed.
Good evening. To Brother Walter Raban, congratulations upon your birthday. To this wonderful audience, to the presenters who present, it is my honor to be here to share in this momentous occasion. Brother Walter and I share a common love for history, and so I hope and pray that this will be instructive for us as we proceed to a wonderfully anticipated evening. Let us bow our heads. Omnipotent and gracious and merciful God, we pause now in this hallowed place that echoes with the sacrifice and contribution of our ancestors who went before us. And even now, O God, as we pause to celebrate and reflect and allow the voice of this fallen soldier, Brother Freddie Wade, to live again in this place, we pray, O God, that as we remember him, that his life and its meaning and its purpose will be instructive, that it will challenge us, that it will summon us to a new awakening, that we might ascend to a greater height of unity, courage, and commitment. Now, O God, bless us in this hallowed place, that when we leave, we will have been transformed. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Now we'll move through the program rather smoothly now. And I would like to ask my friend and former Youth Wing colleague, who is now Deputy Chairman of the Progressive Labor Party, Ms. J. Dawn Simmons, to come and read Mr. Wade's political biography to open up this event.
Good evening, everyone. I certainly consider it a privilege to help my good friend to celebrate his birthday by being allowed the privilege of reading Mr. Wade's bio. And as we saw, the quote that comes up on the screen, there will be a generation that will not be able to say Freddie who. Leonard Frederick Wade, teacher, father, barrister, politician, and leader, was born on the 28th of June, 1939 in the parish of Devonshire. Educated at the Central School and the Berkeley Institute, he later studied teaching in Ottawa, Canada, before entering Queen's University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in economics. Upon returning to Bermuda, Mr. Wade spent nearly a decade in the teaching profession before entering active politics. He joined the Progressive Labor Party when it was formed in 1963 and became the first secretary of the Devonshire branch. He was first elected to the House of Assembly in Bermuda's first general election under universal adult suffrage, May 22nd, 1968, in the constituency of Devonshire North. He held the seat for the duration of his career. Mr. Wade would successfully defend his seat for a second time in the general election on the 7th of June, 1972. In 1973, he went off to London, England to study at the Inns of Court School of Law, Middle Temple. When a general election was called in 1976, he courageously walked away from his bar exams, returning to contest his seat for a third time. After successfully contesting his seat on the 18th of May 1976, he returned to England, completing his law degree and later qualified as a barrister. As a member of the opposition PLP, he held shadow ministries of finance, home affairs, and education during his 28-year parliamentary career. He also served as deputy leader from 1976 to 1980. While serving as shadow education minister, Mr. Wade took over the reins of the PLP in November 1985, after the resignation of Mrs. Brown Evans, later Dame Lewis. At the time, the PLP representation in the House numbered only 7, having declined from its peak achievement in 1980 of 18. Mr. Wade had become leader in the shadow of a severe split in the party, which was followed by a disastrous election result. It was now his job to rebuild. Mr. Wade's strength as a brilliant political strategist made him one of the most formidable members in the House. He held the PLP together when the then governing UBP dominated the legislature with 32 seats out of 40 seats, and the presence of the third party representation. Under these conditions, Mr. Wade painstakingly forged a united group, preparing itself for the election to follow, to rekindle the confidence of its supporters. In preparation for his first election as leader, Wade began the process of putting together the right team, with candidates such as the late Julian Hall, the late David Allen, Dennis Lister, the late Nelson Bascom, and Jennifer Smith. The 1989 election would ring positive, with the PLP increasing its numbers by more than 100%, from 7 seats to 15 seats. Under Mr. Wade's leadership, the party was regaining the trust of its supporters and new converts in the electorate. Mr. Wade's conciliatory manner, keen strategic mind, and understanding of Bermuda's political landscape was crucial in positioning the party in the early 1990s to dominate local politics. He was a consummate politician who was always comfortable dialoguing with the men and women on the street, as well as the CEOs and executives of business. Mr. Wade initiated the party's outreach to Bermuda's business community, particularly international business, helping them to understand the party, its policies, and goals for Bermuda, with an economic environment that benefits all of its citizens. Mr. Wade's work went far to demystify the PLP in the eyes of many, allowing the party to reach new areas of the electorate. The party greatly benefited from these efforts and was able to craft an image of an effective government in waiting. In his second election as leader in October 1993, the PLP improved once again its positioning in the House, with an increase in seats from 15 to 18 seats. This equaled the party's 1980 performance and was now on the doorstep of victory. Mr. Wade had over 2 election cycles made progress as party leader, with restoring PLP credibility with supporters and the electorate. He also managed to rebuild the party, allowing its administration to be given back to the now growing body of members from the hands of the parliamentarians. He attracted talented persons to be candidates, such as the likes of Julian Hall, David Allen, Dennis Lister, Nelson Bascom, Jennifer Smith, Dr. Ewart Brown, Renee Rayup, Leon Jimmy Williams, and W. Alexander Scott, just to name a few. Mr. Wade had rebuilt, organized, and was now leading a renewed PLP that was now witnessing a severely weakened governing UBP, party crippled by parliamentary confusion, a failed independence referendum in 1994, and the McDonald controversy that will follow. This now was the time for a rejuvenated PLP under Wade's leadership to cement its momentum toward electoral victory in wake of a disoriented and divided government. Even while recuperating from a serious operation, he skillfully strategized from behind the scenes, enabling the PLP to capitalize on the governing UBP's obvious weaknesses. Let us not forget, Mr. Wade wasn't all about politics. He enjoyed life and socializing everywhere, talking about literature and music, sports, and sailing in his yacht, Mandela. His family, Gregory, Michelle, Yusef, Frederick Jr., Kamala, and Ciola, and with wife Ianthea, were all close to his heart. We all should remember when there was serious media attention given to Mr. Wade, his wife Ianthea, and their triplets when they were born. A dapper dresser, Mr. Wade was particularly known for his colorful, specially made silk ties, and often earned the best dressed man in the house accolades in the media. Leonard Frederick Wade died suddenly on the 13th of August 1996 while he was setting out from his home to the airport to attend a Commonwealth Parliamentary Association conference in Malaysia. After 11 years at the helm of the party he loved, struggled for, and worked to make thrive, he would not live to see its progress. As party leader, Al Frederick Wade planted the seeds that ensured the PLP was positioned to achieve the historical victory that came under his successor in November 1998, when the PLP assumed government for the first time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Dawn and I were members of the then PLP Youth Wing Progressive Youth. A number of the members are here. I won't mention any of them because they're probably, we're all a little bit older now and probably are too embarrassed. I don't want to embarrass them by pointing them out. But I found most of the people who are here from the Youth Wing in the party already when I joined. So one thing I can say, Mr. Wade cultivated an environment where young people were drawn to. He had the assistance of Paula Cox, Ewart Brown as a youth advisor at the same time as well. So we all got together and worked hard, and often we had Mr. Wade in our presence, and we would debate with him on many issues. And I can't remember all of them, but I remember some, and he would say, you know, it's all right, but you're not going to go in public and say that because I'm not going to agree with you. You know, but he allowed us the freedom to talk and debate and cultivate an environment where we as young people felt that we were a part of the PLP. So that was, we, as myself, Dawn, and others who are here today, one of them is Mark Wade, I'll point him out. We came together as younger people in the Youth Wing some years ago. I won't say how many, I'll just say some years ago. Don't want to embarrass my friends. We'll now move on to the introduction of our esteemed panel. Our first speaker is Dame Jennifer Smith, former Premier and former party leader, and she will be introduced by Senator Renee May.
Good evening, everyone. Good. It's actually an honor for me to stand here today to not just to introduce Dame Jennifer Meredith Smith, JPDBE, but to actually just stand here with this panel. In my time of being a senator, I don't think I've had the pleasure of having every single one of the leaders of the Progressive Labor Party sit here like this right now. Former Premier. So, and like I said, it's an honor for me to even stand here today to be able to read this and to be a part of it. So, Dame Jennifer Meredith Smith, JPDBE. I'm sure I'll get told off about that later, but I've learned to live with that over the years. Dame Jennifer M. Smith earned her place in Bermuda's history as the first Progressive Labor Party Premier, the 7th Premier of Bermuda, and the 5th leader of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party. Dame Jennifer Smith's political life began in 1972, when she became the youngest woman to run in a general election in the constituency of St. George's North. Dame Jennifer would run again for the same constituency in 1976 and 1980. In 1980, Dame Jennifer became the first female and the youngest member of the Senate speaking for the opposition on education. Dame Jennifer would run in St. George's North in the following general elections of 1983 and 1985. She was finally elected after 5 previous attempts to the House of Assembly, representing her ancestral home of St. George's in 1989. In opposition, she spoke on the areas of education, health and social services, youth, sports, community, and cultural affairs. Dame Jennifer was elected Deputy Party Leader in 1994 and succeeded in being elected Party Leader upon the death of Frederick Wade in August 1996. She successfully retained the position for Party Leader in the following contest held in November 1996. In 1998, when the PLP was victorious, she became the Premier of Bermuda. This was notable on an international level, as it was one of the few instances that a female leader was succeeded by another female leader. Dame Jennifer served as the Progressive Labor Party's first education minister from November 1998 to April 1st, 1999. She would lead the PLP to 2 general election victories on November 9th, 1998 and July 24th, 2003, and is Bermuda's second longest serving premier. After taking the party to its second election victory on July 24, 2003, she remained in the position of the premier and party leader until stepping down on July 29, 2003. Dame Jennifer would later serve as the first female Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly from November 2003 until November 2010. In November 2010, Dame Jennifer resigned from the position of Deputy Speaker and was later sworn in at Government House, taking on the position of Minister of Education. For the second time, she served in the role of the PLP's Education Minister. Dame Jennifer would stay in this position until the general election of 2012. In 2005, she received the appointment of Her Majesty the Queen as a Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my fellow St. Georgian, fellow parliamentarian, Dame Jennifer Smith.
Good evening. Good evening. I shall first say thank you to Renee, Senator Renee Mean, for that introduction, because that's what we say when someone introduces us. I want to pay my respects to this honorable group here on the stage with me. All colleagues, all who have served their country and their party well. And I also want to pay respect to colleagues in the audience and thank you all for coming. Wow, you know, it's been 20 years since LF has been gone from our sight, but not from our minds. Just imagine, the airport is named after him, but many 21-year-olds and younger know nothing about the daring that it took to be PLP in the 1960s and 70s. Imagine, if you will, not being able to teach children if your example is to fight for political freedom and better education by getting yourself elected as a member of parliament. Amazing that prior to the 1968 general election, legislation was passed in 1967 requiring teachers to resign their job if they were elected, knowing that the gratuity paid to MPs, or member of colonial parliament at the time, was not enough to support a single man, much less a family. And so this ordinary, extraordinary man, a husband and a father, was deprived of his career as a teacher when he won a seat in his very first election. It is ironic that it was education that actually motivated him to get involved in politics, because he saw the need for better facilities and better education for our young people. And that very reason took his job from him. His 1968 election victory marked the start of the Brown-Evans LF Raid team. And I say team, what a team they were. The yin and the yang of their personalities and expertise gave the PLP the best pattern for leadership. Two people, no matter which one led, the other followed. My first lesson, one that has been ratified by Colonel Butch, is that a good leader is also a good follower. I have seen that demonstrated in both men. They both learned that in the Bermuda Regiment. He, as the son of a sergeant major, he was a cadet, and then he played in the band. I watched him display his fellowship, and when the time came, I followed his example. It was his campaign strategy that finally allowed me to win that seat in St. George's after 17 years and 6 elections. He was going for victory, and so his candidate selection and placement of candidates was strategic. For the very first time, I was allowed to stand as a single candidate for the PLP. Previously, the party's policy had been to contest every seat in a general election. But he was going for victory and only ran candidates in places that he believed we could win. My path within the PLP was very similar to his. He started off as secretary for the Devonshire branch. I started off as CC rep for the St. George's branch. He was elected party chairman in 1970. I served as deputy party chairman. He was deputy leader before becoming leader, and I was deputy leader before becoming leader. I note that someone has described him as lacking charisma. I beg to differ. My opinion is that he was charming, at least when he wanted to be. But I think the problem was he was being compared to Julian Hole and Ewart Brown. Now, how could you do that? You know? I say, take these two men out of the equation and compare LF to the rest of his contemporaries, and his charm will stand out. And no, he did not live in Dame Lewis's shadow, not in the least. They were business partners and they were political partners. And in either affair, one could hear him argue if he had a different position. He stood firm on it until he lost to Dame Lewis. But he would argue with her as partners do, and they brought out the best in each other. He was a man who knew how to follow, and when it was his turn to lead, he made his leadership clear. He had a plan. He was strategic. He expected us to follow his lead and be accessible to the public. He expected us to follow his lead in being social. And he expected us to follow his lead in spreading our relationships to other political parties. In particular, he kept us in close contact with the UK Labour Party, with the PLP in the Bahamas, with the PNP in Jamaica, and with the Barbados Labour Party. He taught me that someone else's emergency is not my emergency, and that there is always time to think, no matter what the other person says to you. I think you've probably heard that before, Michelle. He also believed that there is always a third way, long before that term was made popular. He always believed there was a third way, and so when it came to the John Swan's attempt to have a referendum on independence, and thinking that because the PLP is for independence and it is in our Constitution, that we could not vote against it. And they had said, we won't vote against it. We won't vote. That's the third way. We will abstain. And so I want you all to know the correct word to use for our actions on that day was not to vote against anything, was to abstain. People have said that he liked to socialize, but you have to know that he was totally political, no matter what he was doing. And so his socialization was actually part, and I learned that from him as well, was actually part of his politicalization, i.e., when we would go out so that we could see the people. It was often a time when you would get information. And I always wondered, why wouldn't they just call you and give you the information? And he said, you know, people work, and sometimes it slips their mind, but when they actually see me, they remember that they had something to tell me. And so we learned that. So what you think was him having fun, he enjoyed it, because why can't you enjoy something you love? But he was always thinking politically, no matter what he was doing. And I think we have that example to look at. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dame Jennifer. And as the person who succeeded Mr. Wade in leadership of the party, it was appropriate that you be the opening bat, if one wants to use a cricket analogy, for the lineup. I'd just like to, before we go on, recognize Mr. Wade's son, Gregory, and who's at the back of the room, and his daughter, Michelle, who is here with us as well. Now, we will move on to our next speaker, Mr. Dale Butler, and he will be introduced by Ms. Rael Bowen. Mr. Rael Bowen, I'm sorry. My apologies, sir. I know. I just read what I had written. Sorry. Fred, sorry.
I accept his apology. Evening, everyone. Mr. Dale Butler is an educator and author with a record of service to Bermuda through his political and community involvement. He became a member of the Progressive Labor Party, which he joined at the age of 16, and has continued to serve in the political arena since then. Mr. Butler first ran in 1980 for Hamburg West Central. In this instance, he was not successful. In 1998, he ran and was successfully elected in Warwick East. In 2003, under the new single-seat constituencies, he successfully ran in Warwick Northeast, and from 2003 to 2007, served as Minister of Community Affairs and Sports. In 2007, he was appointed Minister of Culture and Social Rehabilitation. He represented Warwick Northeast, constituency 25, from 2007 until 2012. Widely known as King of the Fish Cakes, Mr. Butler is an accomplished author of 50 books and has produced 4 documentaries, including lectures, festivals, and productions on a variety of topics. One set of books produced by Mr. Butler was on Al Frederick Wade, titled Al Frederick Wade in Words and Pictures, and Al Frederick Wade, His Legacy. Mr. Butler is married to Mara Tajamu and is the proud father of 2 sons, Russell and Jay. With no further ado, Mr. Butler.
Thank you. I was hoping for a one-line introduction because this is not a 5-minute speech. To Mrs. Cynthia Wade and family, former premiers, opposition leader Mark Bean, former parliamentarians, the BIU president, host pastor of my church, Reverend Tweed, to young people like me and some of you in the audience, I'd like to thank you for buying my 2 books. Ladies and gentlemen, God save our gracious Queen. Long live our noble Queen. God save our Queen. I would like to commend MP Walter Raban, a former history student of mine and youth wing leader, for fulfilling and clearly demonstrating through this event the 3 key ingredients that were put in place for all members of the PLP aspiring to lead. Preparing leaders was part of Mr. Wade's legacy. I joined at the age of 16. Immediately, I said I would like to run for office. And Mr. Stanley Morton, MP, was assigned to work with me because I lived in his constituency. He was assigned as a mentor, and it was his job to give me the 3 steps. First, you serve your apprenticeship, attending to meetings, setting up the chairs, helping to raise funds, serving at potlucks and other events. If you were still there after all of that, you would go on to your stewardship, asking questions, making speeches, debating how to talk without a mic. You would have an opportunity to work on committees, making suggestions, demonstrating your organizational skills, presenting papers, no matter how small, canvassing with an MP. And if you were still there after all of that, you would move to step 3, leadership. Upon successful completion of steps 1 and 2, if you were still in the party, you would naturally apply for the position of branch chairman or officer, central committee representative, or an executive position on the central committee, etc. And if you felt comfortable, you would run in a general election, as in 1980 when I ran with Charles Jeffers. We lost in a UBP stronghold to Dr. Clarence James and Ann Cartwright Ducuto, but we achieved a 10% swing in the direction for the PLP. I went on in this third stage to develop the JOBB program with the late Mr. C. Eugene Cox, MP, and then the Martin Luther King National Heroes Day, which was attended for 8 years by over 600 people at St. Paul ME. And 7 days of activities. The first year after Mr. Wade had passed, we had 7 days of activities to remember his life. I have vivid memories of picketing the PLP Kangaroo Court when it held hearings to expel those 4 PLP MPs under the late Lois Brown Evans, standing on my feet to take on Julian Hall and Lois Brown Evans' party leader. Further, I was in the room when the late Ryo Richardson was chastised for accepting a Queen's Award. And last but not least, I also listened to the constant barrage of criticism against the PLP, that we did not earn a business, that we would steal or mismanage all the government money, we could not run the economy, and we were socialists because one of the late founders of the PLP, Wilfred Allen, walked across the Communist Party headquarters in London during the Bermuda Constitutional Conference held there, and that we were communists and socialists because we had a central committee, a term I feel Mr. Wade would have long dispensed with had he become premier. Lord have mercy. Now, if you endured these things and many more, and you were still in the PLP, you would be ready for electoral leadership. That was a part of Mr. Wade's legacy as he brought in more and more new faces from all ranks, but realized that while many were professionals like him, he could not delete from the party platforms what the party intended to do with working and for working class people he lived with and socialized with, from the barbershop on Reed Street to spinning wheel. Many of us went through this effective 3-step plan and went on to become members of parliament, only to see a new generation come along and skip steps 1 and 2, apprenticeship and stewardship, so that their leadership skills would be questionable. Because many progressed in steps, on all 3 steps, Mr. Wade said he was sure we would win the next election. And because I had progressed in all 3 steps, he wanted me to be the PLP's first education minister. I met him and he asked me. That was not to be. But I bear no anger to anyone, because you learned in steps 1 and 2 to put the party first and your personal desires last. Mr. Wade would have been proud to know that this process has been able to produce at least 3 people to contend for leadership every time it comes up at an annual conference. Indeed, I ran for leader, and I think he would have been pleased with the 3 of us, Terry Lister, Paula Cox, for contending. And history will record that my record-breaking total of 2 votes, while humiliating, did not make me angry. You learn to continue if you have been through the process of apprenticeship and stewardship. Today, Mr. Wade would salute the party for its many accomplishments while in government, but he would have questions as well. To begin with, he would be curious as to why we don't remind people of our accomplishments. I only mention a few. Under Dame Jennifer Smith, small class size and 1 man, 1 vote. Single seat constituencies, 2 national sports, cricket and football. Under Alex Scott, the Independence Report, public access to information, CITV. Under Dr. Ewart Brown, the Mirrors Program, the PGA Grand Slam, free bus travel, introduction of fast ferries and the Mincy Report. Under Paula Cox, the 38 information agreements. Tax information agreements, $1 million towards the homeless plan, and the creation of the procurement office. I think I'm right on who did what. Anyway, it was under the PLP, along with many other accomplishments like long-term residence for PRCs, prescription drug benefits, good governance reform, saving of the Bank of Butterfield, the $20 million given to sports, National Heroes Day, and naming of the airport in his honor. The list is very long regarding the numerous things that the PLP, its leaders, its party accomplished, and I think they should be applauded tonight. Right here, right in front of you, alive. been proud to know. That's right. That's right. They deserve it. They did it. He would have been proud to know it. Mr. Wade would have been proud to know that because of their team discussions while he was alive, their team conclusions, their team implementation and execution, many things were accomplished. After all, he was a part of the team, responsible for directly or indirectly for those premiers to be in the party and rising to the ranks of premier. In the book L.F. Wade in Words and Pictures, C. Eugene Cox said, he lived for politics. His skill as a politician will be missed by the whole country. Governor Lord Waddington said, all of us knew that he was ill, but he behaved with extraordinary courage and dignity. In the second book, L.F. Wade, His Legacy, his commentary from Ira Phillip, senior Bermudian professor of history and all things naughty and good, made comments. The current Chief Justice, Dr. Ian Cawley, commented. Tim Hudson, former editor of the Mid-Ocean and Royal Gazette, and comments came from Dr. Eva Hudson. Maybe one day we will see a definitive biography of him or his speeches in print. Not bad for a former stern cutter, taxi driver, painter, dock worker, construction worker, teacher, lawyer, and opposition leader to have accomplished so much in his short period here on earth. But he would have challenged the party to look ahead, and he would have asked, what are you going to do about black-on-black crime and gun violence? Why is our education system not doing more, especially in the trades and for boys? He would challenge us to close the school in June, give each parent $10,000 for the displacement, and reopen it in September as a trade, economics, and hospitality school of excellence. But he would need our support for such a bold move. And recently, the Chamber of Commerce stated it offered its services to both political parties and received no response. Mr. Wade would challenge them to provide the money to make such a radical scheme work. And to the doubters, he would have challenged them for solutions because it was a simple 11-day journey to the promised land. But because of so much criticism, for Moses, it became 40 years wandering in the wilderness. Mr. Wade would have got it done in short order by challenging us to think of the long-term good that this one idea alone would have achieved. Mr. Wade asked us, what are we going to do to honor the grassroots contributions, those people who were there in the rain for bake sales, those people like Mrs. Leonie Richards, how have we honored her, or Mrs. Bernal Henry, or Ann Webb, or Marie Richards, or Mary Haywood, or Hyacinth Burgess, or Laverne Furbert, or Samuel Samuels, a man who brought bags of pennies to the PLP on a weekly basis and remained committed to the PLP and its leadership. I bet you forgot some of those names. He would have asked why we have not included more in the curriculum about the founder of the African diaspora movement, David Allen. The genius of our first finance minister, C. Eugene Cox. Why we haven't added Walter Robinson or Dame Lois Bond Evans or Wilfred Allen, a founder of the party, or Peter Smith or Edward DeJohn, Althea DePina, R. Austin Wilson, and many others. He would have asked, what have we done with former Alex Scott's Independence Report? God save our Queen. He would have reviewed and implemented reversible mortgages as an option for seniors. He would have asked about the unemployed. Use the numerous layers we have to purchase these buildings that are empty around Hamilton, offering you $1 a share to purchase a building so that you would have long-term interest and earn interest in owning some real estate in Bermuda. He would have linked up with our unions to see if they had any additional cash to do that. And last but not least, Mr. Wade would have asked, what are you doing with the 3-step plan to nurture the next generation of workers and leaders? And now, in closing, for the ultimate salutation, after years of being deliberately branded as being communist and socialist, he would have revealed that all he wanted to do, and the founders of the party wanted to do, was what Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, said in her inaugural speech, which amazingly was applauded. almost a direct copy of what the PLP had been saying since 1963. The exact words of the PLP and Labor parties worldwide was given by a conservative party leader just waking up to reality. So former PLP members and leaders and the party as a whole have been exonerated from being bad people who care about the voiceless and those at the bottom. As the author of 2 books about Mr. Wade, published on the first anniversary of his passing, I think Mr. Wade's legacy of being dedicated to the working class and meeting their needs is a major legacy, in spite of the constant criticisms he and the party received, because such sentiments sounded like socialism and communism. He would have challenged us over and over and have found jobs for Dr. Eva Hudson and Dr. Muriel Smith and picked up a median education commissioner. Lord have mercy. History has recorded his vindication, as seen recently from the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, when she stated in her first speech called a centrist appeal. No, it was not an appeal to the true living situations faced by working people described so readily by the CIA and the FBI and even the editor of the Royal Gazette, David White. He even called me a communist because I was a member of the PLP and espoused the same views of the PLP to help those in need, the voiceless and the unseen. And this is what the Prime Minister had to say. Fighting against the burning injustice that if you are born, you will die on average 9 years earlier than others. If you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than if you are white. If you are a white, working class boy, you're less likely than anyone else in Britain to go to university. And if you are in a state school, you're less likely to reach the top professions than if you were educated privately. If you are a woman, you will earn less than a man. If you suffer from mental health problems, there's not enough help to hand. If you're young, you find it harder than ever before to earn your own home. But the mission to make Britain a country that works for everyone remains more than just fighting these injustices. If you are from an ordinary working class family, life is much harder than many people in Westminster realize. You have the job, but you don't always have the job security. You have your own home, but you worry about paying the mortgage. You can just about manage, but you worry about the cost of living and getting your kids into a good school. If you're one of those families, if you're just managing, I want to address you directly. I know you're working around the clock. I know you're doing your best, and I know that sometimes life can be a struggle. The government I lead will be one driven by the interests of a privileged few. Will not be driven by the interests of a privileged few. We will do everything we can to give you more control over your lives. When we take the big calls, we'll think not of the powerful, but you. When we pass new laws, we'll listen not to the mighty, but to you. Sounds like the PLP. When it comes to taxes, we'll prioritize not the wealthy, but you. When it comes to opportunity, we won't entrench the advantages of the fortunate few. We will do everything we can to help anybody, whatever your background, to go as far as your talents will take you. So the work continues. End of quote. God save our gracious queen. Long may she rule all over you.
One thing Mr. Butler has not, lowered our expectations for a exciting and dynamic presentation. He has not, shed that quality. Even as my history teacher, he did the same thing up at Robert Crawford. And that was more years than I care to count. Thank you, Mr. Butler. We will now have the introduction of our third speaker, the Honorable W. Alexander Scott, by Ariana Hodgson.
Good evening, everyone. William Alexander Scott was born in Bermuda in 1940 and grew up in Warwick Parish. Credited for having ushered in an era of community awareness, unity, and transparency of government, Mr. Scott has had a long and distinguished political career. Having served from 2003 to 2006 under the Progressive Labor Party, Mr. Scott was the 8th Premier of Bermuda and the 6th leader of the PLP. Initiated into local politics by former Progressive Labor Party leader Frederick, Mr. Scott was recruited in the early 70s to help with the party's public image and election campaign. During this time, he contributed to producing some of Bermuda's first political commercials. In 1978, Mr. Scott was thrust onto the national stage, serving as one of the 5 members of the Pitt Royal Commission that investigated the root causes of the 1977 riots, of which he is currently the last surviving member. Mr. Scott's frontline political career began in 1985 when he unsuccessfully ran in Warwick West. Following the election, he was appointed to the Senate and later promoted to opposition leader in 1989. Mr. Scott served as party chairman as well as campaign chairman. In his capacity as campaign chairman during the 1989 general election, Mr. Scott is credited with helping his party increase its representation in Parliament from 7 to 15 seats. He was first elected to Parliament in the general election of October 1993, representing the Warwick Southeast constituency. He became deputy leader of the opposition PLP on the 20th of August 1996. After the PLP victory in 1998, he was appointed to cabinet as the Minister of Works and Engineering. He was elected leader of the PLP and appointed premier in July 2003, serving till 2006. Mr. Scott retired from active politics in 2012 and was appointed commander of the British Empire in 2013. Mr. Scott has been married to Olga May since 1972, and they have 2 children, Robin and Lawrence. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce you to the Honorable William Alex Scott, JP, CBE.
I wish to thank the family for the patronage, support, and because you are a political family, your sacrifice in supporting Fred in all that he did. Couldn't have done it without the family being with him, behind him, and more importantly, beside him. Thank you. PLP audiences have changed. I used to stand up here and see senior members, older members. I stand here now, and with few exceptions, everybody is younger. But everybody is so very, very important to the PLP, and for that, I thank you for your presence, support, and continual loyalty to a party institution that Al Frederick Wade gave his life to and for. It would have been approximately 60 years ago when we stood like bookends on the front steps of the old Barclay Institute for a class picture. Al Frederick Wade, Freddie, and me, back row, stage right for Freddie, stage left for me, while neatly sandwiched between us was the class of 1956-7. I begin my salute to Freddie here not to identify the beginning of our deep friendship, but to establish the first indication, for me at least, of his quiet leadership, organizational, I have to say, genius, which was most evident as he, time and time again, would anchor the defense and then quickly, skillfully transition the play forward to offense from the pivotal position of center half on the very successful Berkeley football A-team. However, it would be 40 years later when we found ourselves, by coincidence, at the last minute at the Bank of Butterfield, getting our traveler's checks in preparation for a trip to the 42nd Commonwealth Conference Association in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Warmly we greeted each other, and I told him I would see him at the airport, then turned and hurriedly walked away. Uncharacteristically for LF, he was not there, he was late. And matter of fact, he missed the flight. Uneasily and very concerned, I boarded the scheduled flight, BA flight to London. Later, we were about 20 minutes away from landing when the flight attendant's voice crackled over the flight intercom and said, "Will Mr. William Alex Scott make himself known to the BA officials once we land at Heathrow?" My heart sank. I knew. I turned to Olga and said, "It's Freddie." Once we landed, I had spoken with the BA officials, confirming my worst fears. You see, it was August 13th, 1996. We made arrangements to return immediately to Bermuda. I mentioned high school. After graduating from Berkeley, we both worked and then went off to university. Freddie left the island for Ottawa, Canada, and Queen's University, while I went to the U.S., Philadelphia, and Temple University. In order to earn funds for the next year's tuition, we would return each summer and drive taxis. Occasionally, our paths would cross, and leaning on our cabs, Freddie would talk of politics and the ongoing campaign in Bermuda for universal adult franchise. And I had the good sense to listen. Time passed, we completed our respective studies and returned home. Fred went into the classroom and politics. I started an advertising public relations firm. Fate stepped in. One day again, our paths crossed. At ZFB down by the sea, LF was promoting a PLP event. I was representing a U.S. client. But remembering the old days and our summer conversations, I offered our advertising and PR services, and 6 weeks later, he accepted. He introduced me to the opposition leader at the time, Mrs. Lois Brown Evans, LBE, who was in conversation with an Atlanta PR firm who had outlined what they felt they could do for her and the PLP party to improve their image. I listened, then outlined what I felt we could do for the PLP and produce for the party and Brown Evans, or LBE. They both listened, LF and LBE listened, and concluded the meeting by saying they would get back to me. The rest is history. It was the beginning of a rich and productive relationship and friendship between the three of us that grew stronger with every political challenge we encountered and every battle lost and won. Freddie was a can-do person. When we contemplated producing the first political media campaign in Bermuda for TV and needed more for production purposes than our existing still cameras, Freddie said he knew this white guy who had what I needed. But the guy had said he had to come with the camera. It was okay with me, and the PLP and I were introduced to a man named David Allen. From this time forward, the Berkeley A-team playmaker became the PLP architect of change. Now no longer a football center-half, but a captain on the political field of play, both marshaling the defense and offense, dealing with challenges within the party and change on the outside. His newly formed PLP PR team of Scott Allen created a positive spin and professional focus for the party, messaging in a hostile media. LF was a loyal, dedicated deputy to LBE. Perhaps, though, he recruited more new faces and talent to the ranks of the PLP than anyone before or after. These seismic changes within unsettled some and angered others. Therefore, in 1985, when he assumed leadership as observed by MP Walter Ruban, the PLP suffered a split amongst its members, which resulted in a staggering election defeat. But in the words of evangelist Robert H. Schuller, tough times never last, but tough people do. LF's characterized at the time some of the party's rebels and his key detractors as whiffums. What's in it for me? A concept foreign to a man who literally gave his life for the party and country. This was the moment for that young teenager I had seen on the Berkeley football field who smoothly, deftly switched from defense to offense. He stayed close to the party's labor roots, spending Friday evenings with his union colleagues here at the BIU. He made the rounds of black establishments on C Street and back of town, always staying in touch with the people. Also, he assiduously worked to keep his party together. One approach he used was to hold many delightful Sunday morning breakfasts. Thank you, Anthea. At his home. They were extremely successful. Party members, supporters, and some crossover voters came early and stayed late. They worked so well that LF once was moved to say, you know, at this rate, we will be the first party to eat our way into government. Meanwhile, tactically, he listened to our recommendation as PR consultant and went against LBE. That didn't happen too often. LBE's judgment by taking the politically controversial, risky position of instructing our party members and followers to abstain from voting in John Swan's independence referendum campaign, which, by the way, failed as a result. It proved to be the beginning of the end of John Swan's premiership. Also, from there on in, the UPP's days were numbered. He benefited, as we all did, from continuing the daily routine of convening tactical sessions of LB's kitchen cabinet over lunch and meeting every afternoon, evening in the opposition leader's office down Front Street. To the point that in party meetings, in media, or parliament, he could begin a sentence and any one of us could finish it. It takes a lot of togetherness to confirm and underscore united we stand, but divided we fall. Like any PLP leader, the challenges were legion, for they were many. Therefore, when our one blindly ambitious member reportedly took his efforts to Government House in an attempt to unseat LF, Fred's atypical response was, "That's all right. I wouldn't want to be the leader of a party which did not have men and women with ambition." His political astuteness and pointed cut and thrust knew no bounds. He feared no man. Consequently, when the President of the United States of America, George Bush Sr., first visited with the Premier of Bermuda, and he literally came to town, stopping all morning traffic as he traveled to the Cabinet building before crossing the street and lawn to meet with Frederick Wade at the opposition leader's office. After the customary exchange of pleasantries, a somewhat arrogant President Bush turned to LF and said, "Now, I just met with the Premier, the leader of your country. Tell me, what is the difference between you and him?" An uneasy silence fell over the room. Fred's response stopped the president in his tracks. LF looked Bush in the eye and said, "For one thing, I would not have permitted your motorcade to inconvenience the thousands of Bermudians on the way to work this morning, as the Premier across the way has done." Let me report, the rest of the short meeting was conducted between equals and not the leader of the free world and the opposition leader of a small British colony. Finally, I must say, to my knowledge, LF's, politically speaking, was wrong only about one thing. He was heard often to say, you know, after I'm gone, they're gonna say, Freddie who? No, my dear friend, how wrong you were. And tonight is a good example. You did good by, and people will remember the name Frederick Wade down through the ages.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you very much for that wonderful remembrance of Mr. Wade from your perspective and some of the perhaps unknown stories that many people here have not heard about his activities. I mean, how many of us thought that the opposition leader would take on the President of the United States so effectively? That's a new one for me, and I know a lot of stories. So thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Now, everybody, we're going to give you the benefit of an intermission for a few minutes, so you can stand and stretch a bit if you don't. All right. We were just trying to be good to you, but since you want to keep going, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I will just let you know that there is food outside for you to partake in. There's the table with table with books and things, so you can go at your leisure and take advantage of those things. The baked goods are free for those who may need a little nibble. The soup and rolls is $5, water's $1, and iced tea is $1.50. Trying to keep the prices moderate. We were trying not to have anything at cost, but you know, people have to work. And so we hope you take advantage of what's out there. Much of it has been donated on behalf of this event, and I thank those who donated. So please, at your leisure, as we go on with the program, you can go and partake. Or wait till after the program, it'll still be there, I'm sure. Our next speaker is the Honorable Dr. Ewart F. Brown, and he'll be introduced by Sean Simons.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody tonight? Good. Gives me the great pleasure tonight to introduce Dr. Honorable Ewart Frederick Brown. Dr. Ewart Frederick Brown served as Bermuda's 9th Premier and 7th leader of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party. It might be argued that his formal political career began even before he made his career in medicine. When Dr. Brown attended Howard University in Washington, D.C., he served as the student body president. While there, he attracted local and international attention during the campaign for civil rights, leading the student body during a number of causes and protests. Dr. Brown's local political career began when he first elected to Parliament in 1993 in the constituency of Warwick West during the leadership of L. Frederick Wade. He served in the opposition as Shadow Minister for Youth and Sports, also as Shadow Minister for Human Affairs in 1995. After the Progressive Labor Party epic victory in the 9th of November 1998, he was appointed PLP government First Minister of Transport. After the general election in July 2003, he was re-elected in Warwick South Central and returned to government again as the Minister of Transport, and was also appointed as the Deputy Premier of Bermuda. In July 2004, following a cabinet shuffle, Dr. Brown assumed the single portfolio of the Minister of Tourism and Transport when the two ministries were combined. In October 2006, Dr. Brown became the leader of the PLP and the Premier of Bermuda. He promised his party and the people of Bermuda that he would serve for 4 years and then stepped down to pave the way for younger leadership. On the 17th of December 2007, Dr. Brown led the Progressive Labor Party to its 3rd general election, victory arguably the party's most successful election following the 1998 victory. In keeping with his promise, he retired the Premier and party leader, leaving active politics in October 2010. Former Premier Brown is married to Wanda Henton Brown and has 4 sons, Kevin, Maurice, Ewart III, and Donovan. He is also the proud grandfather of Caleb and Kara. Dr. Brown enjoys traveling, exercising, golf, and observing politics. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Dr. Ewart Brown.
Thank you. This feels like a PLP meeting. That's right. You see the variety of presentations? See, Dale's a lot different from me. Jennifer's different from Alex. That's the strength and power of the Progressive Labor Party. Special greetings to Ianthea and the family. Thank you for Freddie. I asked Ianthea if she could help me remember the name of the doctor at Howard who delivered these record-breaking children. And just as I was about to call her, I remembered the doctor's first name. I always remembered his last name was Dr. Westney, and his first name was Lennox, and it came to me just as I was calling her. But yes, you guys have made history in more than one way. Thank you for being here, and thanks again for Freddie. Special thanks to the chairman, Mr. Robin, sir. And let me tell you something, Walter. You don't have to apologize for being 50. All right? You know what I mean? If he has to apologize for being 50, then I'll be on my knees all night. You know? So no, you're a young man. You're a young man. Go about your work, sir. Now, I remember once I said to Freddie Wade in Parliament, you see, I was not a patient person ever. And no, really, yeah. And Parliament can be hard. I mean, I used to wonder how Dame Jennifer and Paula could sit up there in Parliament and listen to everything that was being said, make notes, and sometimes stay till 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning. And I went to Freddie one day and I said, hey, Freddie, look, This is ridiculous. We are in the opposition. We lose every vote. Why are we getting sleepy too? Why are we staying until 1 and 2 in the morning when we could say what we have to say, vote, lose, and go home? And Freddie said, well, Doc, it's not that simple. He said, there are people out there who want to hear what you have to say. He said, so don't worry about that. He said, go ahead and just keep talking. I said, okay, I'll do the best I can. But something happened before that. I'll take you back for just a moment. Of course, I had let it be known in Bermuda since I was about 18 that I was a political animal and wanted to come back home and make a difference. That was pretty clear. In 1990, and I knew Fred Wade only superficially at that time, I had just, and of course my wife is looking at me, so I have to say this was before Wanda. You got to get that straight, right? But I got a phone call. I had we just had 2 young boys. I just bought a new home, and in comes this telephone call from Bermuda. It's Fred Wade. I said, what's up? He says, well, look, I just want to tell you, those are the days when you had to cut your conversation short, right? He said, look, if you have intentions of coming back home and being involved in politics, you need to start thinking about coming home for the 1993 election. And I said, He said, and on top of that, I know you have an eye on leadership. That was the first time I knew how perceptive he was. He said, and if you want to qualify, he said, qualify for leadership, you have to start off with this election in 1993. And I remember telling my then wife that we're moving back to Bermuda. We can transition slowly, but we're starting in a few months. And she said, but we just bought a new house. I said, the house will be here. And they have houses in Bermuda. And at that point, I began to travel back and forth. In fact, I was telling my son last night that I began coming home in 1990, shortly after he talked with me. And I used to come for 3 days and then spend the rest of the month in Los Angeles. And then I did that for a month, and then the next month I'd come for 5 days, and then that increased to 7 days and 10 days until I was in Bermuda more often than I was in California. And that is how I made the transition. Freddie was very clear. He let me know early in the game that I was coming into an organization whose structure, history, and culture I had to respect. And that this organization was larger than him and larger than me. And so when I did come, that was clear. And you only had to be in the PLP for a short while to get the understanding that no matter what your personal ambitions, no matter how intolerant you might be, how impatient you might be, the organization is the thing. Larger and stronger and more important than any individual, leader or otherwise. Freddie taught some lessons. The first thing I remember about him, and I observed him carefully because that's how I tried to operate, as a young man coming along, not assuming that I was so sharp that I could just rise to the top of an organization without observing and learning what the leadership in that organization did. And Freddie, the first thing he reminded me of was my surgery professor at Howard, Dr. LaFall. Dr. LaFall had a saying that the mark of a great surgeon is equanimity under duress. In other words, when you're in that operating room and that blood vessel bursts, and you can't see exactly what you're doing, right, Doc? That happens. Do you crack or do you collect yourself? Equanimity under duress, strength under pressure. And that's what I first saw, that no matter what happened in terms of internal politics inside the PLP, that Freddie Wade remained a leader in stature and in fact. And I admired that, and I believe I learned something from it. The second thing was I noticed that Freddie was very good at tolerating dissent. Now, if it gets a little sensitive, I don't have a chance like this too often. But you get the point, I think. Tolerance of dissent. When a leader is elected or appointed and rises up the ranks, it is easy to forget that at one time he or she may have been a dissenter. And because you want everything to keep moving smoothly, you want what? Less resistance. And sometimes when you get resistance, you confuse that with what? Defiance. And you start taking it personally. And then those people who are the dissenters become what? The cancer that has to be cut out. And as the dissenters multiply, the more surgery you have to do to cut the dissenters out. And then you look around you, and the dissenters are in the majority. So Freddie Wade taught me and others that not only is there room for dissent, but that dissent strengthens an organization. And leadership doesn't just tolerate it, it manages dissent. You manage dissent. I'm a witness. The other thing that I appreciate, will always appreciate from Freddie Wade, was his ability to team build. You walk into a room, look at what you have. And this is usually, it's pretty common for black people. You could be in Nairobi, Kingston, Port of Spain, or Barbados. It doesn't matter. When you get a group of us together trying to pursue a common political goal, you got a struggle on your hands. Because we come from so many different directions for so many reasons, with so many feelings and so many vibes and so many suppressed resentment, feelings of suppressed resentment. And here we are sitting in a meeting, looking like we're all soldiers, all for the cause. But we know after 20 minutes of discussion, we know what happens. Our differences start to surface. Our differences start to surface. And it takes leadership to first recognize the differences in the room, and then skill, and that's the skill that your husband and father had. The skill to take what Martin Luther King used to say, the jangling discords, and turn it into an orchestra. That's what you can do if you possess the skill of leadership. And if you cannot make the orchestra out of the jangling discords, by definition, you are not a leader. Simple as that. And so I had the fortune of observing Freddie while he was able to sit in a room with Julian Hall, Alex Scott, Walter Roberts, Reggie Burroughs. I mean, this is a different group of people. No twins in that room. You know what I mean? And here was Freddie able to somehow work it, you know, and he would crack a joke, you know, he would say, well, Walter, you don't know what you're talking about, you know, or so, and they would somehow work it out for the sake of the common goal. That's what you have to do. That's one of the things, one of the most important things that I learned from him was how to handle the room, manage the room, and come out ready for war. And I say war because that's the closest thing I can think of in terms of what we have to do, what our agenda is. And so it is important that in recognizing Freddie Wade, that we recognize his ability to build the team by recognizing that everybody in the room had strengths and everybody in the room had weaknesses. But his job was as the master conductor. He had to say, okay, no more horns over here. You know, low guitar, you know, low string, yep, want that up. And we would finish the evening walking out of Alaska Hall, shaking our heads, many times we've all done it, walked out of Alaska Hall, say, you know, I was angry as hell when I came in here, and look now, we are functionally united. I tell people all the time, a political party is not a nuclear family. You get your love at home. A political party is for a political purpose. You are pursuing political victory. Now, for some people, you know, and they can have it. Some people just love the concept of being in the opposition. I hate it. Okay? Because that's not where we're supposed to be. It's not where we're supposed to be. Okay? And so, the ability to understand that our goal as a political entity is different from the goal of a nuclear family. In the nuclear family, if you guys are arguing over something, you have to sit down as mother, daughter, mother, son, and work it out and go through all sorts of things, maybe even some counseling and all of that to work it out. But in the political sense, all you want to get is a political agreement on a particular issue. And then if you are not on the winning side when that is debated, the agreement is you will suck it up and come on board. And I really hope that those lessons that Freddie taught are not just appreciated by those of us who are here. And I want to salute my colleagues for their wonderful presentations. I know Paula is going to do the same thing. But I want to just say that not only should we appreciate what Freddie did in the past and what he shared with us, but should we not raise the question? These lessons were taught, but have they been learned? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Lessons learned, lessons that have been taught. Certainly, Mr. Wade taught us many lessons, and I am pleased that many on this panel are once again reminding us of what they were and what they are. Our next speaker will be Mr. Victor Fishington, former party chairman, and he will be introduced by Ryan Robinson, parent chief.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure and it's a privilege tonight to introduce Mr. Victor Leon Kingston Fishington Sr., JP. Victor Leon Kingston Fishington Sr. has been politically and civically involved in improving the welfare of his fellow Bermudians through most of his adult life. This is strongly evidenced by his membership in organizations such as the Black Beret Cadre, the Progressive Labor Party, and their youth wing, Central Group. Additionally, he became an active member of the Sandys PLP branch and held the position of branch chairman when 4 seats were won in Sandys for the first time during a general election. Victor represented Sandys at the PLP's Central Committee meetings right up until he was elected deputy party chairman in 1988, under the leadership of party leader, the late Mr. L. Frederick Wade. In 1990, he was elected party chairman and pledged to equip all branches with the knowledge needed to win the election and improve the party's financial position. It was his belief that it was because of the help of God and a few strong, dedicated party stalwarts that on November 8th, 1998, the dream of our forefathers came true: a government for the people, of the people. The Progressive Labor Party had won a majority of 26 seats in the House of Assembly, becoming the first Progressive Labor Party government under party leader Dame Jennifer Smith, a victory that Victor holds close to his heart, lest we forget. After having been successfully re-elected since 1992, he stepped down as party chairman in 2000, feeling satisfied that the party's leadership and finances were on solid foundations. He subsequently served as campaign chair in Southampton's constituency number 30 for 2003's general election. He's the loving husband of Judy Fishington, father of Victor II, Teresa, embracing father to Leslie Ann and Maurice, grandfather of Victor III, Brianna, Taye, Stefan, Andrea and Aaron, Mila and Mina, and extended grandfather to Raheem, Azir, and Naomi. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor to introduce to you this evening Victor Leon Kingston Fishington Sr.
Good evening, my elders, gentlemen and ladies. I always like to greet my elders because it's through them that we are here. I like to just shift gears a little bit. You heard from the MPs and our authors, so I'm just a party chairman. I'd like to start off by saying one thing. You have to remember that before there were parliamentarians and senators, there was a party, the Progressive Labor Party. That's where we grew out of to where we are today. I wish to share some of the things that Freddie explained to us. That Freddie, who was fondly known by most people in Bermuda, in all circles, impressed me with during the time I spent with him as a member of the party and as party chairman. I can agree with the other panel members, or the former members, of the things mentioned about Fred. However, my first experience with Fred was when I joined the party and I became a member of the party's youth wing. Him and Ewart Brown were very instrumental for getting the youth of the island involved. And after listening to him teaching us of the basic political science and the importance to understand the local politics, since it was not taught in our schools, and what could be done by a government of the people for all the people. And that's something I'd like to encourage everyone. In your spare time, get a worthwhile book on political science. It's going to be, politics is going to be with us until we die. So you must understand it from this point. The stain of institutionalized racism was most evident, but cleverly covered up by the leaders of that period. Fred and others took time to explain exactly what was happening in our island to blacks and whites alike. Some pages of the original book on racism is still around and practiced today. It may be faint, but it's still there. One thing I can always appreciate about Fred was he was always alert to his surroundings, whether he was at the government house, funerals, weddings, stiff-necked color parties, parties you don't want to go to, but you have to be there, or you should be there, house parties, country and football games, sports clubs, or just walking the streets of Bermuda. and more important, overseas amongst government people and other organizations. You may have seen him, as mentioned before, visiting the local bars and just meeting people in general. Some of those people are maybe members of the party sitting in here now that he invited to join the party, and talking with party members. He always made people feel comfortable at the level of conversation he was having. Never did he look or act towards a person in a condescending mood. Now, if you were to argue something with Freddie, you best have all your ducks in a row and some more. Because he would debate you endlessly and try to change your mind, your view, your clothes. Even if you were right, he would try and change that. And he was such a, but once you was able to convince him of something, he'll be first to say, I'll check it out. He'll never say he agreed. He said he'll check it out. But that was Fred. Fred was elected as a party in 1985 after the then, I hate using these words, but just bear with me, the then Premier John Swan called a snap general election. Let me say one thing. When I was party chairman, I used to encourage people on our central committee meeting, never use the word UBP. It was just the opposition government. So that's what I still call them today. Opposition. A snap general election because he recognized that our party was greatly affected by the split that occurred. Fred was committed to rebuilding the party from within by using grassroots members throughout the island and regain the confidence of his supporters and business community. I became deputy party leader in 1988 and party chairman in 1990, while Fred was the party leader. One of the things that he and I wanted to complete was the renovation of the current Alaska Hall, our headquarters. During that period, we met with many obstacles, including a fire at Alaska Hall. To some of us sitting here can remember so vividly. We had just left at about 1:30 in the morning, and I arrived at my residence in Southampton and received a phone call that the building was on fire. That can't be there. So I got just back in the car and dashed back town, located Fred on the sidewalk. He advised me what had happened. And while on that sidewalk, while we watched the firemen do their work, we agreed that we will open that Alaska Hall on schedule, because we had invited the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Prime Minister Pendleton, to officially open that hall. And praise God, with the community and members and the business effort, we were able to make that deadline for the opening. It was also decided at that time, at a little time during that period, that the damaged floor where the fire was started from would not be replaced, as it will always remind us and anybody visiting Alaska Hall of all the trials and tribulations that the party has gone through and will be going through. However, we know we shall succeed. So I invite you on your next visit to Alaska Hall. It's under some renovations right now, some repairs. But when you visit Alaska Hall, right in the middle of the floor, middle of the hall, upstairs, you'll see a damaged part on the floor. Under his leadership, we steadily increased our PLP representatives to 18. In the general election in 1993, the party was on the move again. The opposition at that time had 22. Fred worked tirelessly to move the party from a government in waiting to be the government, and to this end he insisted all members act as a government in their respective posts. He was like Martin Luther King Jr. He had been to the mountaintop and seen the PLP as the next government, and he used to promote that at all times. We must work to that end. In the summer of 1996, unfortunately, Fred became ill, and he passed on. That affected me quite a bit. He was a great loss to his family, PLP members, and the party, and most importantly, Bermuda community. I was overseas at that time on business as a director for the Caribbean Confederation of Credit Unions, teaching credit union concepts. When our Secretary General, Walter Roban, the young man, contacted me and advised me of the news. It really shook me up. However, we worked very closely together on the phone to coordinate things according to the party constitution, what had to be done, not only for the family, the assisted family will be court, but also for the party itself. And we'd like to thank everybody that helped at that time. I was unable to return back to Bermuda due to, as you know, at that time it was not easy to get bookings changed and all kinds of other problems at that time. But however, as was mentioned, the deputy leader then became our party leader for the time. But most important, what I'd like to say, that Fred promoted as often as he could, as a party leader, that we have a constitution, and within the constitution is what the guidelines are for how the parties to operate. And the constitution is available from the PLP's website. You can see how all members of the party, including the MPs, have to adhere to that. Although it's like anything else, what you don't agree with, you have to work to change it. But the only place you can change it is by being a member of the party, a delegate, delegates conference, etc. However, he also promoted, and this is what I liked about Fred, in his subtle way, about loyalty. You got to be loyalty for something. So be good for yourself, for your family, and also for your party. Because there will always be a party. Because those of us can remember, after the split in '65, some of the members became independent, some formed another party. We was down to one member in the House of Assembly, one member in the House of Assembly, that was Dame Ewart Brown. But the party grew to where we are today. We came back and we took the government and we are on that way for the next step. Amen. So I'd like to thank several of my friends that spoke before me, because my papers I just kept scratching out lines because I don't want to repeat what they had said. But one thing I learned from Fred, he was a very visionary. I'd like to encourage us all, like Habakkuk 2:2 says about vision. Write it, make it plain, so all those who read it can run with it. So I'd like to say this as a former party chairman. So all of us are given gifts, talents by God. Once you see the vision from the party, which is in front of us now, not here about you know what the vision is by our current platform. It may change from the next going forward. But then you as an individual, use your gift, talent to step forward and say, I have something I can contribute to that. Because remember, the gift of the vision is given to a few. Then the leader has to take that vision and present it. So that during that vision, as it's presented, you can help to plug in. And that's what Fred was good at. As you heard earlier, he'll pull out something from you that you didn't even know existed. I didn't want to be party chairman, but it happened that way. He tried to get me to take the seat in the Senate, but I stood that down, and at that time, the Secretary General was Smith, and he took the chair in the Senate. Going forward, I think Fred coined the phrase long before Nike did. He usually just say, just do it. So when you stand up in Central Committee or the Executive Board and you're saying something, he'll hear it and he say, well, just do it. Now, if he didn't agree with it, you wouldn't hear him say that. But that's the main thing. That's how Fred was. If he felt it was worthwhile, and that's how we got where we are today. We are, as party chairman, former party chairman, I have to say this part because Fred would be remiss he would hit me if he was here. We are approaching an election in 2017. Here it is, August 2016. We have much work to do. So when you get the call, I'm speaking now to all of us, when you get the call to assist for the party, I just ask you to step forward and assist in whatever way you can, physically, financially, or spiritually. Prayer works, so just keep praying those who do. Let me pray. One thing I learned at being party chairman, those 10 years, it was not easy because sometimes we had a wonderful meeting, everything went smooth, and other time it would not. And sometimes he'll look at me and say, well, you're the chair. I said, okay. But one thing I learned that once you allow people to express their thoughts, what's on their mind, and it's done in decency and order, that's the challenge, decency and order, because some people like to just override someone else who's talking. Then you can come to a general consensus of what has to be done. Because once we finish talking, then I wouldn't use the word rhetoric. Or if we start talking and narrow down the real course of the meeting or the subject matter. So there's just like a family who has a discussion in the household. We may not all agree with what's happening, but we know at the end of the day, this is what has to be done to support and strengthen the family. So I'd like to encourage us all, as this is a legacy of our former leader, that as we go forward, we need to hold each other's hand physically, or if you can't hold it physically, then we should be able to hold it up in a mental state, so that we can block out all negative things reference to the party and encourage everybody to support what has to be done so we will be the government in 2017. And I have to say that in closing, because I'm sure our friend, former leader, and his legacy would like to say, what are we waiting for? I'd like to say one thing before I close. It was touched on about the staying work, the X. A lot of people didn't understand that. Johnson was pushing for independence, but we didn't know as a party. We used to ask him, what is in this reference? What is in this thing for independence? What is it for Bermudians? So we're now here at 2016, and I'm leaving on this note. We're at the same position. We're at an airport crisis. We don't know what's in that contract. So do you want to accept that and go forward? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. There's one thing that's always different, and I wanted to make sure is that from people who are from the politicians, that from the party chairman, you will always get a different perspective on the workings, because it's kind of like me and Mr. Fisherton were part of the guys in the engine room while Mr. Wade drove the car. So we were required to make sure everything was oiled properly and everything was working, while he himself decided on which direction the car went. So it's a different perspective for being a member of the executive, and that's one reason why I'm so happy that Mr. Fisherton was able to be a part of this talk. And like he said, Mr. Wade could get things out of you that you didn't realize, because I remember how he got me to be Secretary General. He asked me, Walter, I need somebody to just come take my minutes for my meetings. And I'm like, Mr. Wade, but I'm not going to be here. I'm going back to England to get a job. I can't do it. He said, no, just come to the meeting and take my minutes. So that's what I did, because I couldn't say no to him. So I started taking the minutes. And eventually, I continued taking the minutes, and I didn't go nowhere. I just kept taking these minutes. And then eventually, the party conference came along, and Clarky Trott from Somerset, because Mr. Wade decided, okay, Walter, you're going to be elected Secretary General. No one else wanted the job. So you're here, you're going to take it. I said, okay, Mr. Wade. So, but everybody forgot that the position would be filled. So Clarky Trott from Somerset got up, I move and nominate Raband. Everybody said, second it, done. So Mr. Wade got me good, and then the rest is history. And then after that, everybody seemed to want the job after I was finished. So, but that's how he was. He could get things out of you that you didn't even realize. And there's one thing I'd like to read on the lessons that we've heard. There's a lesson that Mr. Wade taught me, and I've never forgotten it. And it's in one of these books that I hope people are looking to buy, what limited copies are left of Mr. Butler's book, one of the books. This is not going to be printed again, so if there are more out there, you need to buy it if you ain't got one. And it's a quote that he gave. I remember Mr. Wade telling me, and I put it in an article. It said, there is a covenant, a trust between the party, its members, and supporters. We, the leaders of the PLP, do not own the organization. It has only been entrusted to us to fulfill the goals and objectives it was created for on behalf of its founders, members, and supporters. This is a change in government to benefit all the people of Bermuda. We work for what the party stands for. That is what matters. And I've always remembered that. He told me that. I've never forgotten it. Amen. Now we'll go on to our concluding speaker, but no less important than those who have gone before. But one thing is important about Paula Cox is that Paula Cox is a part of the legacy because of the role that she played going forward after Mr. Wade left us, and carried on the legacy that he and others had left in Devonshire North and in Bermuda. So it is fitting for her to conclude the esteemed panel of speakers because of the important role that former Premier and Party Leader Cox played in the transition to the next phase for the party. So without further ado, Ms. Tanae Frederick will come and introduce former Premier and Party Leader Paula Cox.
Good evening, everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to share the bio of the Honorable Paula A. Cox and to be in the presence of such great leaders. I could imagine the many sleepless nights you may have had. I hope you're able to get more sleep these days. Paula Cox was Bermuda's 10th Premier and the 8th leader of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party. Paula Cox first ran for the House of Assembly under the PLP Public Relations Officer. Mrs. Cox was a joint recipient of the Leaders Gold Cup, an award to the members who, in the eyes of the party leader, has been of greatest assistance to them during the year. Following the passing of Al Frederick Wade in August of 1996, she was elected to run in the by-election in Devonshire North to fill the vacant seat. Mrs. Cox was successful in the 1996 by-election and ran again during the November 1998 general election and was once again elected to serve the constituents of Devonshire North. As part of the first historic PLP government, Mrs. Cox was appointed to the cabinet as Minister of Home Affairs and Public Safety from 1998 to 2001. She also served as Attorney General from 2003 to 2004 and Minister of Education and Development from 2001 to 2004. In 2004, Mrs. Cox became the second PLP Minister of Finance, succeeding her father, the late Honorable C. Eugene Cox, who was the PLP's first Minister of Finance. In 2006, Mrs. Cox was elected Deputy Leader of the party. In the December 2007 general election, Mrs. Cox was elected a fourth time, returning to government once again as Deputy Party Leader, Deputy Premier, and Minister of Finance. In October 2010, Mrs. Cox successfully contested the election to be the new party leader and was appointed Premier of Bermuda, succeeding Dr. Ewart Brown. Mrs. Cox remained in the office of party leader and premier until the 21st of December 2012. The Honorable Paula Cox was appointed Commander of the British Empire in 2014. The Honorable Paula Cox is married to Jermaine Kilu, and they have a son, Stephen. The Honorable Paula A. Cox.
To Mrs. Ianthia Wade and to the Wade family, to my illustrious co-panelists, to you, ladies and gentlemen, who are members of the PLP, friends of the PLP, and who are here to celebrate and salute Mr. Wade, I say to you good evening and thank you. We're here to salute and honor a great man, L. Frederick Wade. Martin Luther King said we must combine the toughness of a serpent with the softness of a dove, a tough mind and a tender heart. L. Frederick Wade had both. He also had two passions, his family and the PLP. Politics was a passion, and a PLP government was his mission. So borrowing in part from Mandela's words, working to achieve a PLP victory was an ideal which he hoped to live for and achieve, but ultimately it was an ideal for which he was prepared and in fact did die. So if we really, really want to honor his legacy, we must win for the future. We're not here to canonize Mr. Wade. We're not even here to eulogize Mr. Wade. But we are here to mobilize. So let me revisit the three interlocking themes he had in his 1995 annual delegates conference to the Progressive Labor Party. Conviction, commitment, and courage. Conviction. We have to have a clear sense of who we are and what we represent as the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party. Commitment. We must have the stick-to-itiveness needed to keep the dream alive by executing and delivering. L.F. Wade said, having passion is not enough if it doesn't translate into action. And it's not enough to want to win or to dream of winning. It's more important to work together for the victory. So members at all levels have to make the commitment. Constituency branches, party executive, and the parliamentary group. And all of us must come together for the good of the party. We must bury the hatchet and act for the common good. And as Arthur, yes, there's going to be more of that. As Arthur Ashe has said, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. Now finally, courage. Courage is the testicular fortitude to do what is right and necessary to earn the people's trust. In recent times, some have accused us of not wanting the government. And you can understand that. We must have the courage to recognize that we are Bermuda's solution and to man up and act like we believe it. We have the people, we have the brains, and we have the skills. And just like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, so too that should be the case within our PLP family. You got it. What happens within the family should stay within the family. The people are very unforgiving when they believe their interests are coming second to our ambition and self-interest. They send a strong message, and we should all learn from the lessons of the December 2012 election loss. Let's raise the bar. That's our social contract with the people, and we know it's not easy. Former Prime Minister of Barbados, the Right Honorable Owen Arthur, in speaking about Caribbean unity stated, and I quote, "Our political landscape is strewn by the proclamation of grand schemes to forge unity at all levels, and the inability or failure to successfully bring such grand schemes to fruition. Underlying this has been two strong contending forces. On one hand, the superior logic that argues and urges the case for unity and cooperation, and on the other, the working of factors conditioned by history that lead us in the direction of fragmentation and divisiveness. Beyond this, the impatience for progress that is so very much a characteristic of the Caribbean personality very often stands in the way of our being able to acknowledge significant progress when obtained." End quote. We can neither heal nor build when we let a lack of party discipline distract us from the main agenda of service to the people of Bermuda. We can neither heal nor build if we fail to recognize that our very differences and diversity are key to our strength. We can neither heal nor build if we do not accept that good governance goes hand in hand with good government. People know we can do better. They expect us to do better. And when we demonstrate it, they will support us in droves. Look at this table, and I'm going to single out former party leaders and premiers, and look at the diversity. We are not carbon copies of each other, far from it. Trust me, we don't always see eye to eye, neither should we. On occasion, we have disagreed most vehemently. We each have different skills and abilities that we bring to the table, but together, we have a formidable reservoir of talent that is available to those who wish to access it. And I would expect that this is what L. Frederick Wade would expect the party to benefit from, because we've seen and experienced it all. We know of the determination of Dame Jennifer, the dedication of the Honorable W. Alexander Scott, the dynamism of the Honorable Dr. Ewart Brown, and the do-right approach of Paula Cox. So let's build one another together, and let's stay the course. And that's my core message as we honor Mr. L. Frederick Wade's legacy of leadership. The fruits of his labor have not yet been fully realized, and to see it through, and a Bermuda with a PLP government once again, it requires our collective efforts. Mr. Wade and his family paid the price for his sacrifice. Like other fallen PLP heroes and sheroes, don't let his and their sacrifices have been in vain. Our Bermuda Progressive Labor Party is fit for service to the people of Bermuda as the next government. And to quote Mr. Wade, a PLP government is the best hope for the people of Bermuda. Right now, Bermudians want more than what they're getting. They want jobs, justice, and just respect as Bermudians. They don't feel that Bermuda is moving in the right direction. They don't see a future for them and their children, and they have a birthright, and they're not an accident of birth. So, don't listen to those who say your vote doesn't matter. Don't listen to those who say there's no difference between political parties, because there's a world of difference. The PLP seeks to empower, others seek to write you off. And don't give up. Believe we can, and let's do it for Freddie. Now, I had a self-imposed task. It was to be brief, it was to be sincere, and it was to be seated. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Paula Cox, for those appropriate words to close out the list of speakers. Now, as is with any other meeting, there is opportunity for questions and answers. If anyone so wishes to ask anyone on this esteemed panel any questions related to the topic, and we can open the floor for those questions if anyone wishes to address anyone of the panel. Yes? No? No one? No one. No one? Thank you. Right. I'm sorry, I see one person. Miss Glora Ming Tucker. Glora Ming.
I would just like to say thank you to you. Yes. Damn good idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Please, you will not perhaps any time soon get this esteemed panel, this quality available to you. Leaders of the country, leaders of of where we've come and where we're going. One gentleman, do you have a question, sir?
Comment. Good evening, all. Thank you, one and all, for your presentation. And the observation I'd like to make is that I've seen you all come through together, and you're still together. And I pray that you will be with us when we win the next election.
Anyone else? Well, I'm not going to extend it any longer than one has. If you have enjoyed the quality of the presentations, I'll leave you that. So we'll just go to our closing, and I just wish to once again thank our panel for making themselves available tonight for this opportunity. And I feel honored that when I phoned each one of them and contacted them, they agreed. There was no wavering. And I don't know if that's because I asked them or whatever. I'm not going to even guess, but I thank them for whatever the reason is that they've agreed to be here today. I do believe it's because of Mr. Wade and the role that Mr. Wade played in their lives, and I appreciate the fact that they made themselves available to be here. And I do hope that all of you received a quality experience here tonight. I wish to again thank the Wade family for supporting this event in the way they have. And I wish to acknowledge that and give gratitude that you were willing to share Mr. Wade with us, and also the sacrifice that your family made for him to do what he did, which was to serve the people. And I will wish to give tribute to you and that sacrifice. I wish to thank one particular person, and you'll see in the program there are, and if anybody didn't get a program, we have extras here. You can come and take one and some other things that we have here, and so there's plenty to share if you don't. But there was a special thanks page on the back. I thought I had put everybody who had given some contribution to this. I've missed a lot of people, and I'd just like to thank so many people who gave thanks. But there's one person that I'd like to give thanks to, and they're not here. And it's a lady named Ms. Zena Tucker. Many of us in the PLP know who she is. Zena Tucker is a former aide to a number of opposition leaders and premiers, including Mr. Wade and Dame Jennifer, in my particular. But Zena, in my view, is one of the most smartest political thinkers that I've ever met. And she's not here, but I'm going to give her tribute because it's important. She is one of the people who spoke to me and said, what are we going to do to celebrate Mr. Wade? And I said, Zena, I got an idea. And Zena said, Walter, go for it. And she was with me, and even when I perhaps took a little long to contact certain people, she emailed me and says, Walter, have you done this? Have you done that? And I said, Zena, I'll have it done. So Zena was one of the few persons very early on who made sure that I got this done. And I just want to give her her props and thank her for her encouragement and support that she's always given to me. And I can remember to this day when I first met her, is my first visit to the opposition leader's office. And she was there as Mr. Wade's aide, and I was so nervous at the time because I was going down to the leader's office. And I just couldn't, it was a great opportunity to have to go and see him. And she was the one who received me, and again, she's a wonderful, wonderful Bermudian. Thank you to the BIU and the executive and who gave us this hall. Thank you very much. It was important that this event be here for one particular reason, that Mr. Wade used to regularly visit this hall to talk and discuss politics and issues with the people who were here working at the BIU. I used to, and a few others used to join him at these sessions, and they were real political marathons. And if you wanted to be a political athlete, come to one of them sessions, because the members of the BIU and others were here, and you needed to know your stuff, because Mr. Wade and them really had some real talking to do.
Number 10 Downing Street.
Yes, that's the name it was called, number 10 Downing Street, as Mr. Chris Frederick has said. And so it had to be here for that reason. Special thanks must go also to all the persons who I will not mention by name who have helped me do this. Yes, it's my idea. Yes, I drove it, but there are many hands who have made sure this is going on today. Nothing good is done alone. Remember that. So I thank all of you whose names I will not mention who helped put this on today. I'm being told to cut off, but I want to finish this closing so we can close out, if you don't mind. There's a little housekeeping I think is important to do. And it's important because this is about that gentleman. And Mr. Wade would never have not used an opportunity to promote the party, what it's doing, and what role you can play in doing it at any meeting. He was a political operator, as we've been told. He would never not take that opportunity. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity tonight. As I provided fact sheets about him and information for you to take away. There's also a flyer in the package you have for the We Care program. It's a program that's been put together by Simone Smith Bean, the wife of our honorable party leader Mark Bean, to assist needy families for clothing and toiletries and other items. I'm asking you to support that program. There's a flyer here. You can take donations to the PLP headquarters and some other locations to give to needy families in need of some essential items. Also, some of you would have received a white plain envelope. Political parties are not businesses as such. They are like charities that rely on the support and donations of their members. There's a form that some of you may have received. It is a form to pledge if you so wish. Those of you who have that envelope, you may pledge if you wish, or you may not pledge. It's an invitation for you to do so. Political parties run not only on people capital, but they need financial capital to achieve their goals and objectives. Small donations work, big ones are nice. But even small ones make a difference, as we've seen in some places overseas. And I am encouraging those of you who believe in what you've heard tonight and the vision of this gentleman, that you will support the PLP going forward, and that's one way upon which that you can make that difference. If you don't want to fill out the form, you can go on www.plp.bm and also pledge and submit your pledge at the amount of your preference. There is also a few other items I'd like to bring to your attention. There is a project by a group of us. It's a private commissioning of a history of the PLP from 1963 to 1998. If you are interested in this book, among the other books that are out there. There is a sign-up sheet that you can sign so that when this book is made available publicly, you can be made available early to get your early copy of the book or early subscription of the book before it goes public. It is a labor of love for a few of us who have been privately financing this particular project to get a comprehensive history from the perspective not of the politician but of the average working people who have helped the PLP get to where it is through its history up to the great victory in 1998. So there's a sign-up sheet outside. If you are interested and don't want to sign up, you can email or call me and I will take your name and information and make sure you're contacted at the appropriate time. I will also make a shameless plug for a book presumably being authored or put together by Dr. Ewart Brown, who says he's doing a book. So perhaps you should also listen out for when that book is announced at some time in the future. Shameless plug on his behalf that it should be a good book because, you know, Dr. Brown never disappoints. And so, people, once again, thank you for being here to celebrate this gentleman, but also making my 50th birthday in the month of August very special. Thank you for allowing me to give back to you. If you wish maybe other possible events like this, talk to me. Maybe I'll do something else after my birthday time. But I'm not beyond working with others to make sure that we have opportunities like this to hear about topics that we desire. Oh my Lord. Happy birthday to Walter. Happy birthday to you. Thank you.
MP Walter Raban, on behalf of the Progressive Labor Party and Ms. Darlene Rogers, we want to wish you a happy birthday and thank you very much for putting on such a wonderful event.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mr. McLean and Ms. Darlene Rogers.
And it was made and decorated by Ms. Darlene Rogers.
Thank you, Ms. Darlene Rogers. One last thank you. Last but not least, I'd like to thank my beautiful partner, Nadine, and my daughter for putting up with me and having such great patience with me with all that I seek to try and do. I wish to thank them for giving me the latitude to do the work that is here. Nadine is out there hiding, of course, as per usual, but she and my daughter Zara support what I do. And as long as I can get it finished and then come back home to cook and make sure the house things are done. So once this is done, they will be watching me make sure I'm doing stuff at home. But thank you, Nadine and Zara, for all that you allow me to do. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you, sir.